Sarah's hunting Skynet. Here's your look at the upcoming release Threezero Terminator Dark Fate, the Sarah Connor 1/12 scale collectible figure. From the Terminator Dark Fate film, the Sarah Connor figure stands in 1/12 scale and is dressed in real fabric clothing. Standing over 6 inches tall, the Sarah Connor figure features a realistic likeness of actor Linda Hamilton and is built on a custom-designed action figure body with an incredible level of detail. Figured before we get a closer look at Sarah Connor, the 1/12 figure from Terminator Dark Fate, pardon my hairy arm, figured the first thing we would do, and the thing that you guys are probably curious always about at the beginning of these reviews, is how tall is the figure? Well, I'm going to take this device of mine that, not that I'm aware of, has come from the distant future and sent back from Skynet. Probably should look into that, I think. But what we're going to do, though, is I'm going to take the tape measure right to the very top of her head. That's the best way to get the measurements. I'd also like to thank the folks over at Threezero that provided the sample of Sarah Connor from Terminator Dark Fate that we could have a look at in this review. Sarah Connor, by the way, and the T800 that we had looked at previously in an earlier review are slated to release second quarter 2021. So if you go to your regular go-to online sites for your figures and collectibles, you'll probably notice right now there's a pre-order for both Sarah Connor and the T800 for about the price point of $74.99 or around $75. That being said, let's go ahead and take the tape measure right to the very top of her head, stopping it right there. The figure of Sarah Connor stands 5.7 inches in height. Switch that over to centimeters quickly. The figure of Sarah Connor in centimeters is 14.6, a little over 14.5 centimeters tall. And like I was mentioning, we've already had a look at the T800, so what better time to bring him in so you can see the comparisons in size between the two. Clearly, you can see the T800 is a lot taller than Sarah Connor, and that's not that far off, really, when you look at them in the movie. Linda Hamilton, of course, is smaller than Arnie, and I think these figures are properly scaled when you put them next to one another. For the figure's accessories, there's going to be a lot more to go through when it comes to Sarah Connor, and she gets gifted a lot more weapons than what Arnie had. Arnie only had the assault rifle and the shotgun, and of course a couple of interchangeable hands. She does have interchangeable hands, but she has certainly a lot more firepower at her disposal. Starting perhaps first with the most destructive of the lot, she comes included with the Law 66 rocket launcher. You'll see she uses that very early into the battle as she steps out of the vehicle, and first she uses like a Tommy gun style of weapon that sadly isn't included with this figure, but then she breaks this out, puts it, of course, on top of her shoulder and proceeds to fire it off. I do like the detailing that they did to this. I mean, even if you look at it, there's actual taping. Well, not real actual taping, but sculpted in such a way that it looks like there's taping around the nozzle end of the rocket launcher. It also has, similar to the movie, the cloth strap that can actually fit around the figure's shoulders. So if you don't want to display her with this necessarily sitting on her shoulders ready to fire off, then yeah, you can just take the strap and fit it over her body like that. Just have it off to the side like this. May just ultimately do decide to display her maybe just with a rocket launcher over her shoulder like this. I mean, it's neat that you can actually have it on her shoulder, which I actually had at the beginning of this review. But she doesn't come with so many other cooler accessories. Not that necessarily the rocket launcher isn't a cool accessory to come included with, but when you look at some of the other firepower that she's possessing, I'd probably be more inclined to display her with one of those instead of maybe displaying her with this instead. She also includes 2 rather small, rather easy to lose grenades if you're not careful. They're done in a military green with the clips painted nicely here in silver. You can fit these either into her hand, or one thing I do like that Threezero has done is take the figure again, and located on the front of her battle vest here, she has a couple of little loops. This one is the more obvious of the bunch. But there's one right here, and there's one right here to hold her revolver, or her pistol. You just go ahead and take one of the grenades, at least we'll start with one for the time being, and you can fit that just down into that loop. I like that there is storage for some of the things that you're not going to be able to display in her hand because she after all, only has 2 hands. You can also then get access to this one, although this one's a little closer to the vest. So may I recommend taking like a flat-headed screwdriver, something that's not going to cause any damage, and just slide that right up in there to just open up that loop just a little bit more. And then once that's opened and you have a little bit more access to it, then take the other grenade and fit that down in here. I don't know why, for some reason, this one seems a lot easier to get the grenade in. The one next to it, though, I ended up having to do this a couple of times with the screwdriver. It doesn't have to necessarily be a screwdriver, but it's just so much easier to widen that, and you're less likely to cause any damage. So again, you just open that up, and then go ahead and take the grenade, the second grenade, and you should be able to fit that in. I say should be able to fit that in. You may have to make a couple of college tries to actually get that looped into there. You can also take your finger as well, but I find it so much more effective to actually take a screwdriver. And then you're just going to take the grenade and start wedging it in there. Funny enough, this was so much easier to do this before I started filming, and you know, Murphy's Law usually is. Get that in there until eventually you get it inside of her vest. 2 smaller sized handguns also come included with Connor, the top being the HK VP9 handgun, the bottom being the Choppa Rhino 40DS revolver. You can see that there's a difference in sculpt between the two, the revolver being the bigger of the two, I suppose. You can either again hold these in her hand, or going back then to the vest that she wears, you can also see that I've succeeded in getting the grenade in the other slot here. You can then also take one of the other handguns and fit them down in here. This one here is a lot easier to get in than I will say about the grenade, but at least, as you can see there on the front of the vest, there's storage for 3 at least of the accessories that come included with the figure. Likely though, the thing I'm going to have her displayed with is the Super Shorty shotgun, which does have some nice scratching of silver. As you can see, it really adds a nice wear and tear to the shotgun. It's smaller in size, but perfect for her hands. You can actually, speaking of hands, she comes included with a whole series of interchangeable hands. Currently right now, with the forearm, she's got a pair of relaxed hands. But if that's not certainly the thing you want to display with the figure, go ahead and have a look at these right now. She comes with a pair of closed fists. Or she also comes with a pair of partially gripping or a little more tighter gripping hands. Ideal for holding either the revolver or the pistol. Or she also comes with trigger firing hands as well. Let's go ahead and actually change one of those out so I can show you carefully, so I don't, in the process of this, knock one of the grenades out of the slots. Go ahead and grab the figure's arm and just wiggle this off the peg. Just like that. Do it slowly so you're not actually going to be popping the peg out from the forearm, because that's always a bigger hassle to deal with. And then from there, go ahead and take the hand that you want to go with. It also helps to, again, hold on to the peg so it's not going to shift around on you. I will say, though, when it comes to these figures, both this and the Arnie that we looked at before, the hands are very easy to put onto the peg. You would think that the pegs being so small like they are, it would be difficult to get the hands in place, but actually quite the contrary. So we're going to go ahead, once we've got that hand in place, let's go grab the shotgun here, slide it into her hand. And of course, while you're doing this, making sure it lines then up to the trigger firing finger. There we go. And you can have her displayed with that. And also the benefit of these figures having double hinge joints on their elbows means that you can get her in a rather tough looking pose with the shotgun up by her shoulders like this. Short of maybe one other accessory that we're going to be looking at, this is likely the way I'm going to display Sarah Connor on my shelf. That other accessory, by the way, being the shades that she has from the movie. Now you would imagine this sitting onto her face would just probably rest on top of the bridge of her nose. You wouldn't be that wrong, but there is also one thing that they put in place to ensure that the glasses weren't going to fall off. If you look to her face, which we'll talk more about in a second, on either side of her head, right above her ears, there's peg holes. There's a more obvious one on the right side, but there's another one here, a little bit smaller, right above her ear. So if you are taking her glasses, that's very, very carefully, you don't want to drop these, of course, fit them over top of her eyes, like you normally would put glasses. But then when you're doing it, make sure you're putting the end of the glasses into that hole. It's better to start with the larger hole, because the other side isn't so much of a hole as it seems more like an indentation. You may be able to see what I'm talking about. So the end of the glasses actually sits inside that hole, while the other side more or less sits into almost a little ledged area. But it's more than enough at least to keep the glasses in place. And it ensures that, of course, if you're going to be displaying Sarah Connor with the glasses, which likely is going to be the route that I'm going to go, at least the glasses aren't going to fall off. The only downside, of course, of having her displayed with the glasses is that you lose a little bit of the sculpt that Threezero took the time to sculpt onto the figure. So why don't we go ahead and take those glasses off and get a closer look at her face. So looking at the head sculpt for Sarah Connor here, I'm rather happy with what I'm seeing. This is a case where, like the Arnie we looked at before, as I spin the figure around, I'm seeing Sarah Connor or Linda Hamilton from all angles. Mind you, of course, she's a little older in Terminator Dark Fate, and it's a shame she had to come back and reprise her role for such what I feel to be an inferior Terminator sequel. But I will say, to the credit of Threezero, similar to when I complimented the T800 head sculpt, I will say, like, that looks like Sarah Connor from all angles. Such subtle details, too, as well, when you're looking at the head sculpt up close and personal. Wrinkles and the way the face would start to droop as you get a little older. It's those little nuances and the paintwork that they've incorporated to the face here that adds the real realism that I'm seeing here with both these figures we've looked at so far. That's a really nice head sculpt. I do like also that they've darkened the areas around her eyes, and seeing it up close you can see there's bags happening under there as well, some wrinkles on the sides of her eyes too. As I said, very happy with this head sculpt. The only thing I would offer up as a critique is, of course, in the movie she's sporting more grayer locks. The sides here, they've added these extra pieces, one here and one here. I'm trying my best not to block it. From the side, it doesn't look so bad. On the top, it seems like they've just plugged in hair onto the top. But that's such a very small critique, and certainly it doesn't serve to be a deal breaker at all when we're having a look at this head sculpt. Very, again, happy with what I'm seeing. We're going to move this one over just for a second here, and I want to bring in the Arnold Schwarzenegger one that we looked at before, of course, the T800. The skin tone is definitely different between the two. Sarah's got a much more fair skin tone. Arnie's got actually a little bit more of a slightly grayish skin tone. But I like that they didn't use the same skin coloring for both the figures. When we, of course, had a look at the T800 here, it was a well-dressed, smaller 1/12 scale figure. And we're essentially getting the exact same thing with Sarah Connor. Now, we already looked at the vest. The vest doesn't seem to be something that can be removed. I don't see a Velcro section, nor I didn't really spend a lot of time actually trying to find a way to remove the vest. I would likely just keep it in place. I know when we looked at the T800 figure, I chose to take the jacket off simply so we could look at the arms underneath here. At least unlike the T800, who I feel is designed specifically to be displayed with the jacket, Sarah Connor being sleeveless like this. Clearly, yes, you can see that the plastic used for the arms matches the plastic that they use for the hands. So it's a nice seamless transition. We will be talking, of course, more about this in a second, but I like the fact that these figures have double hinges on their elbows. Single hinge really isn't the way to go, so I'm glad to see that they're going with the double hinge route. Of course, we get a little bit further down on the figure. Got these kind of cargo pants with little pockets here on the side. The pockets, as you open them up, seem to be serviceable pockets, so I suppose if you do have the grenade that doesn't fit properly into the vest, you probably could easily just put it into the side pocket instead. The seam work, and certainly the stitching, looks rather polished on Sarah. You'll also notice here on the back, and I noticed this when I took the figure out of the packaging, that she has a little more scuffing on her behind. I'm sure that's intentional, as it's really only on the bottom of her pockets here. Likely they just wanted to age and dirty up those pants just a little bit. As we get down to her feet, going back and watching the movie again, I think her footwear is just slightly different than this. She doesn't have the trim, I feel, around the bottoms where the sole is attached to the rest of the boot. I may, if anything, just go in there and touch that up and make that all a dark line instead of that lighter line. But again, that and the little strands of hair on the top of Sarah's head, about the only thing I probably would have changed differently on the figure. Unlike the T800, though, where he did have sculpted soles on the bottoms of his boots, Sarah Connor actually goes the route of more of a smoother tread. You can see on the bottom here. It doesn't mean necessarily that the figure has any problems standing. Actually, quite rather the opposite. Both her and Arnie that we looked at before had really no issues standing them at all. And because they do actually have really good articulation, we'll get more into it in a second, but specifically here on the ankle, it means that when you're standing the figure, you sort of can angle the ankles, so you have a better, more stable footing on the figure. For the sake of looking at the figure's posability, I've decided to take those grenades out. I didn't want to chance fate just in case they fell out. I'm just going to leave those off for the time being. For the articulation on Sarah Connor, her head is going to be a little bit of a different makeup than the Arnie that we looked at before. Arnie's, actually, his head was attached to his neck, so the ball joint was actually at the base of the neck. Sarah actually benefits from having the articulation here further up. She still seems to actually have a secondary ball joint at the base of the neck, so she actually gets afforded 2 different ball joints. One at the neck, and then one for the head itself, where you can do all the things that normal ball joints would give you. As for the arms hinge out very easily, and because she doesn't have the bulky jacket that Arnie had, moving her arms out, it's no issues whatsoever. You can bring the arms forward, back. She does have a swivel, it seems, right at the top of the shoulder, a double hinge on the elbow. And then, again, whatever hands you decide to display her with, the hands rotate all the way around, and you can also hinge them back and forth. Let's just remove this hair at the top there. It's going to be a lot concealed. There's going to be a lot of the articulation hidden underneath the vest, but she does have the same articulation, it seems, as Arnie. You can move the torso up and down, as this part right here. Basically, from this part up is a ball joint, and then she has a lower ball joint at the base of the torso, or the base of the abdomen. Legs split out. You can bring the legs forward and back. Just a swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinge on the knee. I know we've already discussed it, but we'll quickly go back to it. Again, I like the fact that even though her feet are encased inside plastic boots, where, again, articulation on the boots, or at least the feet portion of it, are going to be a little bit more limited. But if you look at the top of it, they've ball jointed further up. That is something I like that they've done. Because if they had ball jointed further down, let's just say right here, even if there was a ball joint working behind the scenes, you wouldn't be able to do this with the boots. That's a small thing, but you think of other companies when they plug in boots like this, they tend to plug them in further down, which really then just defeats the purpose altogether of being able to actually move the feet back and forth. Sarah Connor has full articulation despite the fact that she does actually have boots on. Last thing, we'll just put the figure down here. And again, we'll bring in the Arnie that we already had a look at before. The only thing I could say again as an additional critique about this line is the fact it's characters that I really like based on a movie I didn't really like. I don't know what licensing they actually have when it comes to the Terminator property, but if we hopefully have gotten ourselves really nice looking Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger likenesses in a 1/12 scale for an inferior Terminator, I hope they at least have licensing for the rest of the Terminator franchise so that maybe we may get down the road, I don't know, kind of these cloth 1/12 scale figures of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the T-800, and Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, from maybe like a Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And if they've done anything, if they could do anything to those figures that what they've done to this line that we've seen so far, we could have ourselves some pretty fantastic looking smaller scale Terminator figures that we can have in our collections. Sarah Connor's a really nice looking figure with some fun accessories that you can display along with her. You know, even though she comes with a lot more than the T-800 we looked at previously, I was a bit surprised to see that Threezero didn't pack her with the Fostech Origin 12. It's that automatic shotgun that she first has when she's engaging the Rev 9. She comes with everything else, including the rocket launcher. Surprised again she didn't come included with the Fostech. Now, granted, for all the things that she comes packed with, you can easily come up with your own way of displaying the figure. I'm probably going to still display her, I think, with the glasses, and maybe with the rocket launcher, or probably with the shotgun I've got her displayed with currently. I feel like Threezero has done a service to both these characters. I wish the same could be said for Terminator Dark Fate. It's not my least favorite Terminator film. Terminator Genesis would be my least favorite. But Terminator Dark Fate, unfortunately, takes the second last slot of my favorite Terminator films from the property. Both of the likenesses are spot on. I think Linda Hamilton's might be just a bit closer than the T-800, but both of them, that's not selling anything short on the Arnie that we looked at before. I think, like I said, both the head sculpts that Threezero have done on these figures, not to mention the tailoring of the costumes and the accessories that they come included with, these are great looking Terminator figures to be picking up and putting on the shelf. Now, like I said, now in both the cases of the Sarah Connor and the T-800 we looked at before, they're slated to release in the second quarter of 2021. In other words, the sites that you're normally going to now for your figures or statues and all your other collectibles, you'll probably see listings right now for these being a pre-order for the price point of $74 to $75. If that may seem high, it's actually rather not. If you compare it with other companies, I'm not going to list the other companies doing it, but the other companies doing 1/12 scale figures, $80 to $100 is not that far of a stretch to believe that you're going to be paying for this line. The fact that you're getting these figures for around that $75 price point with likenesses this good, I think these are great looking figures. It's again a shame that it has to be based on Terminator Dark Fate, but maybe this will be an entryway into Threezero expanding out from this and maybe giving us other figures from the other more better Terminator films, if you ask me. Imagine this scale of figures in the T2 or Terminator 2 character lineup. That would be awesome. But a big thank you to the folks over at Threezero that provide the sample of both the 1/12 scale Sarah Connor and the 1/12 scale T800 that we looked at before from Terminator Dark Fate. If you guys are new to this channel and enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Be sure as well to turn on the bell notification, and be sure as well to come back to this channel regularly, because not only are we going to be looking at more Threezero releases, but there's definitely going to be a lot more coming your way, so keep your peepers peeled. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.